There was a time when being tired meant you had done something. You worked, you moved, you built, you solved a problem. And at the end of the day, exhaustion felt earned. Now, people feel tired before the day even starts. Not physically tired, mentally tired, existentially tired, the kind of tired that sleep doesn't fix. And when that happens, people start turning inward, asking the wrong questions. Questions like, what's wrong with me? But that question assumes something important. It assumes the environment stayed the same. It didn't. The world you're moving through now is not the same world your nervous system was shaped for. You feel that mismatch every day, even if you can't explain it. You feel it when silence becomes uncomfortable, when boredom feels unbearable, when being alone feels strangely loud, when being connected all the time somehow makes everything feel further away. Not because you're failing, but because the rules quietly changed. No announcement, no transition, no moment where everyone agreed this was happening. It just shifted, and you were expected to adapt instantly. There was a time when attention had edges. Moments ended, days closed, conversations resolved. Now everything overlaps. News bleeds into entertainment. Work bleeds into rest. Leisure bleeds into obligation. Nothing ever fully stops. So your mind never fully rests. And when the mind doesn't rest, it starts mislabeling the problem. It calls it anxiety, or lack of discipline, or motivation issues. But what it really is reacting to is compression. Too much input, too little integration. Your brain is processing more human information in a week than previous generations processed in years. Not better information, just more of it. And quantity without meaning doesn't create clarity, it creates noise. That noise slowly erodes your sense of orientation. You're not lost, you're overloaded. And overload feels exactly like failure from the outside. This is why so many people say things like, I don't feel like myself anymore. Not because they changed, but because the conditions for being themselves disappeared. Identity needs space, reflection needs silence, meaning needs time. Those things are now treated as inefficiencies. Everything is optimized for speed, for reaction, for output. Very little is optimized for coherence. So people move faster while understanding less. They speak more while saying less. They scroll more while feeling emptier. And they blame themselves for not thriving inside a system that was never designed for thriving, only engagement. Here's the part that's uncomfortable to admit. A lot of what feels like personal struggle right now is actually environmental friction. The same person placed in a different context will feel radically different. Not happier, not perfect, but oriented, grounded, capable of depth again. Instead, people are being asked to live in a state of permanent partial attention, always available, never present. And presence is where meaning comes from. Without it, everything feels thin. This is why even good things don't land anymore. Accomplishments feel muted. Relationships feel flatter. Experiences feel like they pass through you instead of staying with you. You don't savor, you archive. You don't live moments, you document them. Not because you want to, because that's what the environment rewards. And slowly, life starts to feel like something you're watching instead of inhabiting. That disconnect is not a personal flaw, it's a structural outcome. And the most dangerous part is how normal it's become. When everyone feels this way, it stops being questioned. It becomes just how things are now. People adapt, they cope, they numb, they lower expectations without realizing it. They stop asking for depth because depth feels inconvenient. But the longing doesn't go away, it just goes underground. And it shows up as restlessness, as irritability, as a sense that time is slipping faster than it should. People say years feel shorter now. They're not, they're just less distinct. When moments aren't processed deeply, memory compresses. Life feels shorter because it's less textured, not because it's worse, but because it's thinner. And thin experiences don't leave much behind. So when you look back, it feels like nothing happened, even when everything did. This is where people get stuck. They try to fix the feeling without addressing the cause. They optimize routines, they chase productivity, they seek constant stimulation. But stimulation is not nourishment, it's distraction. And distraction feels good in the moment while quietly making the problem worse. Because it teaches your system that stillness is unsafe, that boredom is a threat, that silence needs to be filled. But silence is where integration happens. Without it, you're always reacting and never absorbing, always moving and never arriving. So you feel busy without feeling fulfilled, engaged without feeling alive, connected without feeling known. And eventually, that state becomes exhausting. Not because you're weak, but because no organism can live in constant activation forever. The nervous system eventually pushes back. It does that through fatigue, through apathy, through a dull sense of dissatisfaction that doesn't go away. That's not failure, that's feedback. And here's the reframe most people never get: your discomfort may actually be a sign that something in you is still calibrated correctly. That part of you still expects depth, still expects meaning, still expects life to feel like something. And it's confused by an environment that offers constant stimulation but very little substance. So it sends distress signals, not because it's broken, but because it's paying attention. The people who don't feel this at all are not necessarily healthier. They may just be fully adapted, fully numb, fully synchronized with the system that trades depth for speed and calls it progress. That's not an achievement, that's an accommodation. And accommodations always come at a cost. This is the part no one wants to say out loud. You're not failing to keep up, you're noticing the cost of keeping up. And noticing that cost creates tension because you can't unsee it. Once you sense the mismatch, pretending everything is fine takes effort. Effort you no longer want to spend. So you pull back. You disengage slightly. Not because you don't care, but because constant engagement feels like erosion. And then people around you may misunderstand that withdrawal. They call it laziness, cynicism, negativity, but it's not withdrawal from life. It's withdrawal from noise. And noise has been mistaken for living. The world didn't become cruel overnight. It became crowded. Crowded with information, crowded with opinions, with urgency, with artificial importance. Everything demands attention. Very little deserves it. So attention becomes fractured, and fractured attention can't support meaning. So this is why many people feel like they're behind, even when they're doing fine. They're not behind, they're just out of sync with a pace that never slows down, a pace that treats humans like processors instead of organisms. And organisms need rhythm, cycles, rest, contrast. Without contrast, nothing stands out. Without pauses, nothing lands. Without depth, nothing satisfies. So if you've been feeling off lately, unmotivated, detached, restless, before you assume something is wrong with you, consider this. You may be responding appropriately to an environment that is subtly hostile to human depth. That doesn't mean you escape it, or fight it, or reject it completely. It just means you stop internalizing the blame. You stop calling awareness a defect, and you stop mistaking adaptation for health. Because the most dangerous thing about a system isn't that it's harsh, it's that it convinces you your pain is personal. And once you believe that, you stop questioning the environment. You turn all that energy inward. You self correct. You self optimize. You self blame. Meanwhile, the conditions remain unchanged. So the discomfort returns again and again and again until you either numb it or listen to it. Listening doesn't mean rebellion, it means recognition. It means understanding that feeling off in a world that's constantly accelerating may not be pathology, it may be perception. And perception, even when uncomfortable, is not something to fix, it's something to interpret. Nothing is wrong with you, something changed. And once you see that clearly, the feeling stops being a mystery. It becomes a signal, not telling you to run, not telling you to give up, just reminding you that you were never meant to live at this level of compression indefinitely. And the fact that you feel that, that's not weakness, that's still being human.